Fall Guys was basically the most popular game back in 2020 for about a month, but as famous as the game was for its gameplay, its fame was immediately overshadowed by how fast the game died. Hell, talking about the game's downfall back in the moment is still my most popular video to this day. But with the game well past its heyday, at this point, let's look back retrospectively at why this game failed to really succeed. So despite the game's major failure out of the gate, the game had major success, of course. The first remnants of this game's existence was back in 2019 when it was revealed at E3 with a small trailer. The title was set to release on PlayStation and Steam as a child-friendly party battle royale. But honestly, the game at this point hadn't received too much hype around it, and as we will see in a little, the game wasn't expected to be that large anyway. As time progressed, the game was being developed little by little until it was officially released in August of 2020, which was when the game absolutely exploded. This feels like one of the more rare cases of a game's blow up, because generally there's hype built around these games, or at least over time they begin to gain traction for various reasons. But Fall Guys entirely skipped that stage, and overnight it was one of the biggest games at the time. But why? Well, there's a lot of minor factors that played into its success. Things like the pandemic made these multiplayer experiences much more appealing, as interacting with people socially was naturally much more difficult, but things like that were sort of minor in comparison to the main reason behind the game's growth, and that of which being the fact that it was basically free. Kind of. It cost money to get the game on Steam, obviously. However, in the first month of the game's release, it was free to get with PlayStation Plus as well. So at the time, there was literally no real reason not to try it. Also, by the way, guys, I just launched a Discord server. I'll be chatting there most hours of the day, so come say hi, link in the description. But anyway, another part that could have debatably played into the initial success even more was the fact that streamers and YouTubers played it like crazy. And naturally, if a game is free to try and tons of people are constantly playing it, a domino effect begins to happen where everybody begins to hear about this game. Another external factor that made the game so great was the incredible community around it. Things like memes on TikTok and Twitter were becoming super popular, which is something that has low-key become a key marketing technique in the modern landscape, with places like Among Us or Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach taking their fan communities to the next levels through such interactions. The game itself was also just pretty fun. It was simple and easy to learn, anybody could pick it up at any time and know what they're doing, and it was overall something quick and easy to get the hang of, which would end up being super important as the game grew to the point where even the most casual of gamers were hopping on to give it a try. But as this game started to grow, we began to see one of the first major issues. The whole PlayStation Plus thing played a crucial part in Fall Guys' initial growth. This also meant that in terms of consoles, the game was PlayStation exclusive. So now, while the game was getting incredibly popular and tons of people were playing it, the sad reality was that majority of people who would have wanted to play it at the time were unable to because of this limitation. Xbox players were left out, Switch players, which I thought would have been a large target audience for this game, were also left out, so that's immediately two of the largest selling consoles taken immediately out of the equation. Not to mention a slightly smaller issue with getting this game out to people was the fact that this game was targeted towards kids, yet it charged $20 to play, which in my opinion is pretty fair considering the quality of the game, but with that younger target audience where they often can't spend any money on games, I felt like there would have been more potential in making the game free to play entirely, because while there was the incentive of getting battle passes and other cosmetics entirely free, I think that adding DLC in a free-to-play style game may have worked better with people who weren't really bothered about paying for a game. The second issue that arose was that this game got pretty competitive, honestly. If you just look at any gameplay of the title, even if you haven't ever played it, you can already tell it's not built to be much of a competitive playing field. And it wasn't built to be like Fortnite or anything where wins and other things really mattered. But naturally, as the game got more popular, people wanted to top the charts among their friends by winning as many games as possible, which of course was the incentive, obviously backed up by the fact that some cosmetics were only obtainable by winning the games. However, this often led to people playing the game for hundreds of hours trying to become the best they could be, which made the casual appeal start to fade away. And even worse, this competitive aspect was taken to a literally unfair level when people had decided to start cheating on the game. Yep, you heard it right. This little kid-targeted party game was absolutely riddled with cheaters, which is honestly just embarrassing. But while all the people who cheated were obviously playing a part in ruining the game, the part that caused the most irreparable damage in these regards was how Fall Guys themselves handled these situations, which was basically by doing nothing. There was literally no reporting system or anything, and tracking players was basically impossible anyway, because initially every player was marked automatically by a number of 1 to 10,000, and since there's more than 10,000 players obviously, that meant there were overlapping names. So even if you did catch a cheater, it wouldn't matter if you had their name or anything, because Fall Guys themselves didn't care about user reporting at all all and trusted their anti-cheat, which was horrible. I mean, eventually nobody even tried to hide their cheats in the game because there was no reason to. And when playing the game, just one cheater would ruin the entire lobby, which made it a lot less fun. Another issue that made the game pretty damn annoying to play was the fact that as the game grew, it ended up way outdoing not only the developers' expectations, but also the game's limitations in general. And after the game's release, it wasn't just unplayable because of the amount of cheaters riddling and ruining the game, but also because the servers were constantly crashing or full, and it became incredibly clear that the devs weren't prepared at all for such a massive game. And as we will talk about in a second, their lack of preparation when people wanted to play the title inevitably led to the majority of them wanting to do the opposite. Now, you may be wondering the reason as to why I wanted to talk about this game once more when, to be honest, it's been long gone and borderline dead for months. And the reason for that is because most of the issues for this game were actually solved over time. There's a new naming system, there's way less cheaters, and the game is now coming to other platforms, so it should be all good now, right? Well, that's the main thing I wanted to address in this video. The fact that, no, the game isn't alright. And despite all this, the numbers have been consistently low for the game ever since its initially successful launch. And the reason for this just comes down to the fact that making a successful game is just as much about getting it hyped up as it is about making the game actually good. For example, Among Us was out years before it actually got popular. And even though there were some changes that attributed to its eventual success, the game fundamentally was just as good as it is now, but still had a fraction of the players. And despite the quality, the game didn't actually get popular until people started noticing how good it was and gave it exposure over streams and YouTube videos. But on the other side, there's games like Hello Neighbor that are rated as one of the worst titles to release back in 2017, but yet its impressive alphas and major YouTube coverage allowed for it to get so popular despite its flaws. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that quality-wise, Fall Guys right now is better than ever. And most of the updates that the fans have ever asked for have been slowly added into the game, but yet it's still failing to grow in even the slightest bit with every season. And that's basically just because there's no hype anymore for Fall Guys. The game became repetitive pretty fast with its basic minigame style, and when these other issues I've been talking about started to show up, people noticed them. And just as fast as they were willing to play and try the game, they decided to entirely drop it. And I don't even think there was much Fall Guys could have done about this, honestly. The game was never supposed to be as large as it was, so most of these issues shouldn't have ever been problems to begin with. But either way, once these issues inevitably became a thing, the game's lifespan became a ticking time bomb that couldn't be stopped. Because in all reality, it's not really that easy to try and entirely reform the way your multiplayer game works within the couple weeks that it remained popular. This, along with the fact that eventually August passed and people stopped getting the game for free on PlayStation, eventually led to the way less popular Fall Guys that we know today. Also, around this same time, among the hype for all these multiplayer type games, the game Among Us that I'm sure we all know came in and swiped the throne from Fall Guys for pretty much the rest of 2020. But even that game inevitably had its own struggles as well. And to hear about those, watch this video right here. Once again, join my Discord, I'm probably there right now. Subscribe, and peace.